This is the first item I made, and I never wear it. You don't want this to happen, okay? You will probably have to frog a lot. Hi everyone, and welcome to this new fun video. In this video I will try to explain everything I know about designing and crocheting your own crochet clothing. I have been crocheting this is my third year now, but I have been crocheting a lot, okay you guys, a lot. And I started designing my clothing I think about a year and a half to 2 years ago, so I have like a little bit of experience and I will try to explain everything I know, but I am fully self-taught. So I hope this video can be useful to you. This has been requested a few times already to make like a big video on how I design my own clothing and like some tips and tricks also for beginners. And since none of my projects are fully finished yet at this point, I was thinking I can just script, film, edit and publish this video in one day. It's like snowing in the background, but I thought the color palette would fit my background. There will be some spoilers in this video for upcoming videos, by the way. I'm also wearing these ridiculously long nails because I thought they really matched like my makeup and my look. But I'm curious if those nails will fall off throughout the video, and I'm not used to having long nails at all. I have my phone here as well because I have noted down all the bullet points I want to talk about on my phone. So if you see me looking down, that's why. And before we start, I also want to give a quick disclaimer that I post a lot of crochet content on my YouTube channel, but I also post other content like illustration content. Okay, I'm gonna hint, this is a little disclaimer for an upcoming video. Something I illustrated and made. I do a lot of other crafty stuff, but usually my crochet videos perform better on YouTube, and it's not that the click rate is higher, which means that if my thumbnail and my title gets previewed, that people click on it more often. It's more so that YouTube just previews my videos more often if they are crochet related. So in case this video does do well on YouTube, I would suggest you to subscribe. And I post a lot of crochet content, but I also post other crafty and sometimes illustration types of content on my channel. So that's my quick disclaimer. And then maybe first of all, I want to show you a few examples of some items I have designed myself. Oh, and also I have like a Ko-fi membership, which is called Hooray Club, and each month I upload at least one pattern PDF or quote-unquote instructions, because my patterns don't get tested because I make a pattern every single month, so I don't really have the time to do pattern testing and stuff like that. It's more kind of like a dump for like my process of how I design something. So if you are interested in seeing my thought process slash patterns on how I design my items, you can become a Ko-fi member. And I also send out physical rewards if you're interested in that. So I think I want to show you the first item I ever designed myself. This is very hard to do with long nails. How do people with long nails function in life? I actually have no idea. This is the first item I made, and I never wear it. It was also a tiny bit too big. So I would honestly just say the first items you're gonna design, chances are high they aren't gonna fit. You might not be happy with them, but I would suggest to keep going, because after this like a year and a half I have been designing, I keep making new items that are my favorite item I ever made. There is so much going on, and I feel like my problem in the beginning was wanting to add more and more, like with all these different colors, scalloped edging, these graphs. These are birds, by the way. Some people thought they were dinosaurs, but they are supposed to be birds. Then like these squiggly details, I also added ribbon onto it. And yeah, I did use this model for an upcoming sweater vest. I'll show a picture here. I made 2 of those, and those fit me very well, and I actually wear those sweater vests quite often. So yeah, this is my first ever design I made, and I don't want to like sell it or anything because it's just very sentimental. But it was also slightly too big. This is the last item I designed myself, so a lot more minimalistic. I try to do like extra designs and then a bit more simplistic designs now and then. And this is already a spoiler because next week I will upload the video of me making this. This is also part of a series I'm doing, so it's part of a whole outfit I crocheted, but it's already finished. So next week, well, I still need to film the reveal, so that's why I couldn't upload the video today already. But this is the last item I designed. I also sometimes use other people their patterns. I would really suggest to follow other people their patterns because that way you also learn new techniques.
Oh my god, I already lost one nail. Wait. No, it was just a random nail sticking onto my clothing.
This video is gonna be very chatty and chaotic, you guys. I'm sorry in advance if you wanted like a very upbeat short video. It's not gonna be that, not on my channel. So first I want to talk a bit about the type of yarn you're gonna use, because of course the materials you're gonna use is like, I feel like the most important part of making an item, and I feel like this also counts for when you're following a pattern, a crochet pattern. So I could talk so much about yarn, but I'm gonna try to keep it short. So you have different types of consistencies for yarn. For example, acrylic, it's gonna be a little bit hotter than wool, I think, and then wool is extremely stretchy as well. Cotton isn't very stretchy, and yeah, for example, I am using this yarn at the moment, which is acrylic, and I'm using it with a 6mm hook, which is I think slightly smaller than recommended, which makes the fabric very stiff. So you have to keep into account like how stiff do you want your fabric to be? Do you want it to be stretchy? How like fine do you want the fabric to become? For example, this is wool yarn, and this was very stretchy because I used it on this skirt. Oh, by the way, I was just talking about this yarn. I used this type of yarn for this sweater vest. I also designed this sweater vest, by the way. This also was one of the first items I designed. And then obviously you also have to think about like the type of item you want to crochet. If you want it to be a summer top, I would suggest cotton. I did make this. I did make this top with wool, but it was very thin wool, and I feel like wool is still quite breathable, so I will mainly be using this for spring. But yeah, for summer I would probably suggest cotton, but then the annoying part is that it's not stretchy, so you kind of have to consider different things. You can also use multiple types of yarn in one project. For example, I have this bandana here. And as you can see, I used the same color, but I did use like a mohair type of yarn for the butterfly designs, and then a normal cotton for the filet crochet grid mesh stitch. So you can use different types of consistencies, also different colors. You can create very fun effects, but I would suggest that the thickness of the yarn is kind of equal, or if one type of yarn is smaller, that you would double or maybe even triple strand it. You can also use like a cotton yarn combined with a mohair yarn, like in one strand. But I would also suggest to really check the washing instructions, because I have had items, wait, I'm gonna show you. Okay, this is a super fun cardigan that I designed with scrap yarn, and I love it so much. I wear it quite often, but I put it in the washing machine at the like hand wash setting at 30 degrees Celsius, and a lot of the yarn kind of like felted, so I would really suggest to check the washing instructions. And if you don't know them, especially if it's a wool yarn, I would suggest to just wash it by hand, although it's so annoying, but you don't want this to happen, okay? So yeah, lesson learned, I guess. Then I'm gonna talk a bit about the types of stitches you can use. There are like the basic stitches like single crochet, double crochet, slip stitches, stuff like that. But you also have like very fun different types of stitches like lace stitches, and I would suggest to just look them up on Google, on YouTube. Maybe you can buy a book. I know they have many types of crochet books with different stitches. For example, different granny squares you can crochet. Or you could also just follow other people, their patterns, and like pick up different types of stitches that you can implement in your own designs. Next, other patterns. So I would really suggest, if you're starting out with crochet, if you want to first follow other people, their patterns, because you can really pick up on ways they crochet. For example, I learned how to do ribbing because I did ribbing so much in other patterns, and you can really learn that way how an item is constructed. And if you're very new to designing your own clothing, I would suggest to maybe pick up a pattern from someone else and maybe do some adjustments so that you really like your item and that you can make like your ideal item. But I would definitely suggest to not then sell that pattern, because obviously you didn't really make it yourself, if you know what I mean. Next, the hook size. So obviously on every skein of yarn that you buy, they have like a recommended hook size. So I would always suggest to use that hook size. If you want the fabric to be a bit more flowy, you can use a smaller hook, but then there will be holes in the fabric. And if you want it to be more like tight, and if you want the fabric to be more stiff, I would suggest to use a smaller hook size. Also, if you're crocheting something and you come at a point of your item where you want that piece to be a bit more tighter, you can always use a smaller hook. And if you want the piece to be bigger, you can always use a bigger hook size. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about the actual designing process. So I draw out my sketches on Procreate, or I just have something in my mind and I start completely from scratch. But I'm gonna show you an example of a sketch I did. I usually at this point already start with making samples of the crochet stitches. Sometimes I take pictures of those samples or pictures I find online of the stitches I want to use, and then I put them next to my sketch. So I'm gonna talk about inspiration for a second. I get all my inspiration because I watch so much YouTube and other creators post online. I know that not a lot of people who crochet like to watch other people crochet because I don't know, it's like if you are working on something, it can be kind of annoying to see other people working on it as well, and then you keep thinking about it. Or maybe that's just, if you do it as your job, that it's annoying to see other people do it in your free time. I have no idea. But yeah, I watch so much YouTube and other people on social media. But I would also suggest to just get inspired by other things that aren't fashion. And just save as many inspiration as you can. You could be inspired by a specific theme, which I have done many times. For example, this outfit was based on Very Hungry Caterpillar. It can also be fun for all your items you design yourself to have like a specific style, but I honestly don't really care about that as much. I kind of just want to design whatever I like. Me personally, I also get inspired by sewn items that I find on Pinterest, for example. I don't really get inspired by crocheted items because I honestly just don't want to copy other people, their crochet designs. So often I look at sewn designs because it's not really copying someone, their creation, if you know what I mean. Another thing you can do if you don't have as much inspiration is to just look in your clothing closet to see which item you could copy or get inspired by. Maybe you can even take the measurements of that item if you're just starting out and you need like a little reference. I'm gonna give you an example. I bought this cardigan on Vinted, and it's like with this filet crochet effect almost, and then I decided I wanted to remake it myself. So I took all the measurements of that cardigan and then I recreated myself in another color that I really like. Obviously, I really like green. And I also have a PDF on my Ko-fi membership where I explain how you can copy a cardigan in specific. So I like typed out a lot of tips and how I copied this cardigan in specific. Now I'm gonna talk a bit about the actual execution, the actual crocheting. So first of all, very important notice, you will probably have to frog a lot and redo a lot, and maybe your sketch that you made needs a little redesign, because it's easier to just change up your idea while you're crocheting and it's not maybe working out completely as you wanted it to. And you have different ways on how you can execute your item. For example, I use both techniques quite often, but one of the techniques is to do it made by measure. So you just take all your own measurements and then you crochet based on those measurements, and you also should fit on your items quite often, but I feel like that's also the case if you follow a pattern from someone else. But I would really recommend to fit it on as much as possible, because otherwise you will have to frog a lot or it won't fit perfectly. So yeah, that is made to measure. And then another technique that I also use quite often is making a graph. And how I do that is I first make a swatch and then I measure that swatch, and then I make my own measurements, and then I do all kinds of calculations to know how many stitches I need in the width, for example, how many rows I need in the height, based on that swatch I already made. And then I can go into Stitch Fiddle. I always use Stitch Fiddle, and then I can make the graph there. I'll show a little example on screen for you. And this is also very handy if you want to do color work in specific or filet crochet. You can just make a graph, but I would suggest to first make a swatch. The bigger the swatch, the better it is. I have to say that. And then you can just put in the measurements and the swatch information in Stitch Fiddle itself. And how I create my graphs, I usually just draw in Stitch Fiddle itself. I used to first make drawings on my iPad and then import those pictures into Stitch Fiddle, but now I just find it easier to just draw into Stitch Fiddle itself. I'm not gonna go too much into detail about Stitch Fiddle itself, but I do have like a little bit of explanation on my Ko-Fi membership page if you're interested. And then obviously also how I designed that cardigan that I just showed, because it's filet crochet, so I made the whole graph in Stitch Fiddle first before executing it. But yeah, I can't stress enough, the bigger the swatch, the better. And if you want the item to be stretchy and fitted on you, I would also suggest to measure your swatch when you're stretching it out. Like, you want the swatch to have the same consistency as if you would wear the actual item you want to make. Now I'm gonna do a quick round of some tips and tricks that are kind of random, but I still want to say to you before you encounter your design process, your design journey. So usually when I start chaining for my item, usually the starting chain is a tiny bit longer than how the actual piece of fabric will turn out, but I feel like that's also important to know when you're following a pattern. So I feel like you should keep that in mind when you're gonna start a piece of fabric. Yeah, again, fabric stretches very much, crocheted fabric, especially wool, for example. Cotton, not as much, but if you're making swatches or anything like that, keep it like stretched, hold it out before you measure it, because if you want your piece to be stretchy around your body, you should also stretch out the swatch, and then you can take the measurements, and then you can, for example, make your graph in Stitch Fiddle and stuff like that. But yeah, fabric can get very stretchy, crocheted fabric I mean. Oh, another tip I have is to just keep like a cheat sheet of your own measurements. I have this. So I follow sewing classes, and one of the first things we needed to do was to measure each other. So we have like this table of all our measurements. This is very hard to do with these long nails. So here are some of the measurements I have for myself. This can be very easy to just keep for yourself, and then you can reference it when you're designing something for yourself. I would definitely suggest to do like your chest size, your waist, maybe your shoulders, your arm width, your hips, the length of your bust, the length of your legs, all depending on which item you want to design, obviously. If you're gonna do tapestry crochet, for example, with just single crochets, I would suggest to keep the floats in the back quite loose, because if you're gonna make those floats too tight, then your fabric is gonna bunch up. Now I do my tapestries usually with Tunisian crochet. I honestly feel like it looks so much better, but again, keep your floats as loose as possible. Well, not too loose, obviously. And if you're gonna do tapestry and crochet in general, I would suggest for each piece of color to make like a separate skein of yarn, so that there aren't too many floats in the back to begin with, because those floats and everything can make your fabric quite thick and stiff. So if you want it to still be a flowy fabric, I would suggest to make as many skeins of the different colors as possible to avoid too many floats in the back. But that's more like tapestry crochet, not super related to designing your own clothes. But yeah, I wanted to do a quick round of just random tips I had. Yeah, obviously my next tip is fit your item all the time, because you will need to frog a lot if you don't. Another random tip is you don't need to crochet all in one way. You can obviously, like, for example, here I crocheted this sweater vest from the bottom to the top, but then obviously I attached the ribbing onto it, so you can be as creative as you want. You can even do freeform crochet, which is like, I'm gonna show an example on screen where you're gonna just freehand like a random squiggle and then base your work around that. You can honestly be as creative as you want. You don't need to just crochet one way and then your item is done. You can be really creative with it. You can use a mannequin that's your size if you want to. If you don't want to fit it on your body yourself, or if you want to drape certain items. I feel like draping is more something you do with actual fabric and not crochet. But you can use a mannequin. Actually, I picked up this mannequin at my sister-in-law yesterday. It is not my size. She needs to be a lot thicker. But yeah, I will probably try to make this mannequin bigger, or I could use it in the beginning to just display some of my clothing on. Oh, another tip I have, if you're crocheting oversized items, make sure that it's not a very stiff fabric you're using. For example, I made this sweater vest for my boyfriend Evert, and I wanted it to be very oversized, but it just didn't end up looking good because this fabric is very stiff. And while he was wearing it, he looked like a Roblox character or something because it was so oversized. So I feel like that's also something you can take into account. If you want something to be oversized, you should make a fabric that's quite flowy, because otherwise it will look very boxy. And then my last tip I have noted down on my phone is to use techniques and stitches you've used before for a new end goal. So for example, if you've seen a particular technique or stitch in another pattern or something you've made yourself before, to just be creative and like use it for something else. I'm gonna give a very quick example. For example, on this top, I did like a little bit of a ribbing on top, but it's not like the actual ribbing where you crochet in the back loop only. It's like a lot more flatter, and then I did a little bit of a wannabe sweetheart neckline. Well, I'm trying to show it to you. I don't know if you can see it, but it goes a bit like this. So I obviously did the technique of ribbing, but I changed it up a little bit so that it fits this item a lot better. That's like my quick example. So I don't know if I missed something. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments and I'll try to answer as quick as possible. And if there are several questions that come up often, I might do like a part 2, or I have no idea, to be honest, because I feel like I already talked about a lot in this video, but I don't know if you have any questions, or maybe I could give more examples in an upcoming video. But for now I'm gonna end this video. I have like a video call in 20 minutes with my job coach, and I'm here looking all fabulous just to talk with my job coach. I bet she's gonna be very confused about that, why I look like this on a Monday afternoon. But yeah, if you're interested, I would definitely recommend you to subscribe to my channel, maybe like or comment on this video, and I will see you in next week's video. Have a good day or night. Bye bye!